Well, it had a couple good moments. I'm John Redland with my review of Jingle, Jangle, A Christmas Journey, a Netflix original movie written and directed by David E. Talbert, who directed Almost Christmas. Stars Forrest Whitaker, Keegan-Michael Key, Hugh Bonneville, Anika Nomi Rose, Ricky Martin, Felicia Rashad, and various others. And it starts with Felicia Rashad playing a grandmother telling her grandkids the story of the invention of Jeronicus Jangle, played by a young Justin Cornwell, and then later played by Forrest Whitaker. He's an inventor, has a wife and child, and he's a brilliant guy. He has, all these great ways of figuring out toys and ways to please the town and just, raise money, just sell these things, sometimes give things away because he's such a brilliant inventor. He's living on cloud nine. He's got an apprentice named Gustafin, who's later played by Keegan-Michael Key. And everything's going good, and then one sudden event, switches everything, and then suddenly Jeronicus's, legacy basically takes a hit, and he's no longer seen as the great inventor because his ideas get stolen. And from there, things kind of go downhill until he has to realize, years and years and years later, that he is still the talented inventor when his granddaughter comes into his life and helps him restore his legacy eventually. Even though it's tough to crack through a guy that has suffered so much devastation, so much loss in his life. Now, I want to be perfectly honest here. I'm totally out of the demographic for this movie, even though I do like Christmas movies. I was a little bit worried how this one was going to be, especially since it was 2 fucking hours. And that's one of my main criticisms with this movie. The acting was not that bad. I mean, it was kind of typical of a kid's movie, with a few adult themes. But what my main issue was is this had no business being 2 goddamn hours. You could have cut this down to 95 minutes. Nothing would have gone amiss. The sets were cool. The costumes were cool. Some of the special effects actually were pretty damn cool. And the cast was pretty well-rounded. Everybody played sort of surface-type characters outside Jeronicus and his daughter and his granddaughter. Everybody else is just kind of there. They were just kind of one-dimensional characters. Even Keegan-Michael Key's Gustafin is basically just there as kind of a generic, villain type. But the main issues that I have with this movie is, one, it's too long, and two, there's a lot of musical numbers. A lot of musical numbers. Now, normally I don't mind musical numbers. I love Hamilton. I mean, that was grand, an entire musical, but still, I don't mind when a movie has musical numbers in it, especially if it's a Christmas movie, holiday themed, all that spiritual, just have, be a spirited movie and bring up the Christmas spirit, just have it be happy, have it be all this. The problem is a lot of these musical numbers felt shoehorned in, and eventually it just got to where I was kind of bored by them. Now, I wasn't bored by everything. There were good parts in this movie. I liked the bond between, Forrest Whitaker, the granddaughter, and his daughter. I liked that. That was a good bond. You could see the pain in his eyes. The one issue I do have with Forrest Whitaker, though, he couldn't quite decide on an accent. It seemed to kind of jump all over the goddamn place. But that being said, it wasn't a terrible movie. I'm going to get into spoilers here in a little bit, but it's a movie obviously about family and believing in yourself. It's just also too long. I could imagine kids would enjoy this, but you really got to make sure that your kids are willing to sit down for 2 goddamn hours. Now, this is better than another Netflix original movie, a Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting. Almost said Adventures in Babysitting. No, that one wasn't necessarily a kid's movie. Babysitter's Guide to Monster Hunting was not all that good. In fact, it was pretty goddamn shit. This is better, but it does get stretched out way too far to the point where, okay, you could have wrapped this up way sooner than you did. Not a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination. Good heart to it. And a couple of the musical numbers weren't that bad, but too many of them got repetitive, and it got to the point where it just got a little bit blah. Now, that being said, it did capture the Christmas spirit pretty damn well, even if it, went over into a bit too sappy. I think kids will enjoy it, but just make sure that your kids are willing to sit down for a movie this goddamn long. I can't say that it's my most recommended movie, but it's certainly not that bad. Now, I am going to get into spoilers, though, here in a bit, so I'm just letting you know. You can sit down and watch this movie with your kids, but it's not the greatest thing. But anyway, 3, 2, 1, and go. So, here's the spoilers. Gustafin steals his inventions because there's a doll that gets created, Don Juan Diego, voiced by Ricky Martin, which I was absolutely floored by. I don't know why, because, maybe it's because I remember Ricky Martin being a pop star, all the way back in the late 90s, when I first heard about him. And I know he was in another group before that, but still. Every character outside of, like I said, the, Forrest Whitaker, the daughter and the granddaughter, kind of just feels like they're just there. And yes, kids might find some of this stuff amusing, but it does get a bit draining because it feels like they were required to get this thing to 2 hours and it didn't quite work. And Gustafsson is just kind of there. He's just not really much of a villain. Obviously, he's like a pawn because Don Juan Diego finds out that he's going to be a mass-produced toy and says, hey, why don't you steal these plants, burn these plants so I can be one of a kind, and you can be this great inventor and betray this guy that brought you in as his apprentice. And that's basically what, does this whole thing. And then years and years and years later, while, Jeronicus is on his ass, Gustafsson is kind of on his own ass because he's run out of ideas, stealing all these ideas from him, and then he's got to try and get more ideas. Go to the invention shop that's now just a pawn shop because Jeronicus is about to lose his goddamn, he's about to lose his empire. He's about to lose everything. And it takes a while for his granddaughter to get through to him. And then obviously she's very smart and everything, helps him invent some stuff, helps him, bring a toy to market, this robot called Buddy 3000. It's a very annoying robot, I gotta say. It's not quite as annoying as a robot in Treasure Planet, but yeah, that robot kind of got on my nerves. But the bond between him and the granddaughter actually seemed genuine. And I like Forrest Whitaker, I just don't get the accent thing. But as things go on, you have to believe, and like the toy ends up getting stolen. The robot gets stolen. So the daughter Journey, or the granddaughter Journey, and a young apprentice boy named Edison, who's helping out around the pawn shop, go and get it in the most contrived way possible and somehow manage to get through this tunnel with just this giant spinning fan and somehow manage to survive. It's so ridiculous. And they get help from a character named Mrs. Johnston who is sweet on Jeronicus. And from there, they get the robot back. There's this plot by Gustafsson to say, hey, that's my robot. Oh, wait, no, it's not because there was a special ink used on the plans. Oh, no. So he's arrested and the robot, or the little doll, Don Juan Diego, gets, shut down and is going to get mass-produced after being reprogrammed because, he's this evil doll and everything that's, manipulative. And everything's fine, the Empire's back and everything, and oh no, this grandmother that's telling this the story to these kids, it turns out that the grandmother's actually Journey. Yeah, we all fucking knew that. I mean, come on, that really wasn't all that shocking. It sounds like I'm really down on this, and I'm not, but I guess I just got annoyed with the length of the movie. And it felt, the musical numbers, by and large, there were a few that weren't that bad, but at least half of them seemed either forced and or unnecessary. If you cut out 3 of those, you could have had this done in 95 goddamn minutes. But it was lavish, production-wise, and it looked good. Overall, though, I'm going to say C+. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite. I was bored more often than I thought I would be. But it did have some endearing moments to it, enough for me to say C+. That's a very modest recommendation. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rethlin. I'll see you soon.